Welcome, Frank, to Kaupr TV. This is probably one of the first interviews you have done since you took over as CEO in Safello again. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Morten. Yes, the very first one on video, at least, for what it's worth.
Nice for us and nice for our viewers. And we just have to start. How has it been 2 or 3 weeks into the job again?
Oh, back into the fold. I think, as you said on the sidelines, you have a lot of ideas and a lot of things you want to implement, both culturally and practically, and what you want to develop. So being back at the driver's seat, if you will, is just gives me a lot of energy. So it's fun. Yes.
But there was another story 3 years ago that you wanted to be a chairman to focus more on strategy. So how have you used these years?
Then it wasn't so much fun. No, I was thinking, we need to get the MiCA license. Sounds like a terrible job to do. So now we get the MiCA license. Now the governance structure is in place. Everything is ready to be commercialized. But it was also like, stepping out, getting a new perspective, and then it starts coming back again. And I thought the timing was right now with getting the MiCA license, being the only company in Sweden to have the MiCA license, to commercialize, which I couldn't commercialize when we did the deal last time with Avanza, which was obviously the reason why that didn't go through. So for me, it was like, okay, we built this with the notion of going to the institutional market, but they can't really play until the MiCA license is in place. So what do we do in the meantime? So it was kind of a perfect time during that period to step back. But guess what? We have the MiCA license now. So, yeah.
But in these 3 years, there has a lot of things happening in the States, in Asia, in Europe, and also in the Nordics. And what are the most important trends or happenings that you see?
Where specifically?
The last 3 years, and pick your geography.
Geopolitically speaking, the United States, obviously the Trump election changed the landscape entirely from a global perspective. They were actively fighting crypto companies in any shape and form, trying to shut them down with the so-called Operation Choke Point 2.0, led by Elizabeth Warren on the political side, where I think a lot of value was destroyed. A lot of companies were basically hurt by that kind of policy. You could go to the SEC and they would effectively not tell you how you're regulated and if you should be regulated, and you were on your own, and they would come with enforcement action anyway. So it was an impossible landscape for the United States to operate in. That has changed now. With different types of legislation that create clarity in the US. And even though you have the MiCA license in this regime in Europe, the US still dominates the entire crypto market from a capital markets perspective. The investments that have gone into the crypto market, as well as what we recently talked about, stable coins. The whole market is denominated in USD. And with USDC, USD Tether, all the different stable coins are dominating the entire crypto market. So what the US does and what the US market does and what the US regulator does has a great ripple effect on the rest of the world. So that is, I think, on the political side. And now I think what's interesting geopolitically is what effect that will have with how Europe is going to stand against what's happening in the US. Like, are they going to actually create like a European central banked stable coin and going to actively support it? Or are they still work with the existing system as value moves into the crypto market? So that is interesting. Locally, kind of same old. I don't feel
even in the Nordics.
Well, yes and no. Like, I don't think I've seen the breakthrough like that I know can happen, particularly on the institutional side, which has always been a little bit the case with anything new. I saw the same trend with fintech when I started in 2013. It was this PSD2 legislation came into effect, and then the banks were basically, had to do open banking, but they were sort of supporting it, but not supporting it. All of those APIs and all those connections are still terrible because obviously it's their incentive not to make it work so well for startups. But fintechs as a category really was lifted up and accepted, invested in, and also owned by the banks because they make sure to have equity positions in those companies. That has not happened yet with crypto in a major way, and I think we're about to witness that.
And quite recently, independent of your change in leadership, the company also said that you will give a more priority to the institutional clients than the retail.
Yes.
Why? And are you leaving the retail?
Of course not. Like we have a retail platform that's still the majority of our revenue, and we see a lot of opportunities, particularly structurally, on opening up the retail market entirely for us. But more about that in the future. But the institutional philosophy was always we're the Safello into crypto for both retail and institutions, companies alike. And what we saw in 2000, I think it was 22 by now, we tried the first institutional approach that was just simply not possible outside the MiCA regime, where of course there have been many warnings with Finansinspektionen that say like crypto no, the warnings issued. And it had to be in this regulated form with the MiCA license, where I think now is the time to change that. So for us, being the only company that has a MiCA license, that has done everything by the book, that has been audited by the regulators several times, this is the time that we should capitalize on that. And of course, we have the technology. We have done everything structurally from a governance perspective, as well technologically. We have everything to do that. But of course, now it's time, okay, who's going to go first? And that is a little bit how Sweden is. One has to go first, and then they all will go. I think the safe, discussion now seems to be stable coins within a very restricted form. But that will move to sort of broader crypto adoption within the institutional market. And we want to be there to play for that.
Looking at the Nordics from our point of view as a journalist, we often see and hear that in Sweden, you have a Finansinspektion that is putting out the warning every second month or something. And even that a lot of the crypto companies are not able to have a bank in Sweden.
Yes.
So that is two barriers. But you still think that this is the time for opening up the institutions?
It is the time for institutions to change their tune. And I really think, because the legal argument and the legal consideration from their perspective is no longer there. Now, if you don't have a good standing with FI, or you're afraid that they will audit you when you're going to go into crypto, okay, then maybe you don't want to do that. But if you have your books in order, there's no legal argument to say no. And I think, I can speak to from our perspective, we're actually seeing a lot of demand even coming our way of institutions that do want to do it. So how do we get that done? And that is, of course, the puzzle piece that we're now putting together, or me in my new role putting together with some of these financial institutions.
We are also seeing that the different crypto exchanges or crypto brokers, they have different positioning. Someone are picking high net worth individuals as clients. Other ones are going for the retail. Someone are also trying to do some crypto banking thing.
The crypto banking thing?
Yeah, whatever you call it. I mean, support to be a crypto bank with banking support. And other ones are launching ETPs. You also have launched some ETPs.
Yes.
What is the business strategy? Is the core business still crypto exchange?
Yes, I mean the core of it is, of course, crypto exchange functionality, everything that we have regulated within the MiCA license. So that is the custody and trading capabilities from retail to institutions, etc. The other side of the equation, which is the one that I've been spearheading last year, and in what we founded was Safello Labs, which was a subsidiary of our group, was to focus specifically on decentralized AI. But also for me was a testing bed to see, okay, give me 2 people in the organization or 3, and let's see if we can go AI first with everything. And it was actually both internally quite successful, and then externally within, I think it took a fraction of the time that it would take if we had done it in a traditional way. We were able to put this whole platform out, wutao.app, which is a decentralized platform with all trading capabilities and decentralized wallet for Bittensor, the decentralized protocol that I've been very passionate about and vocal about. So those were the initiatives that I led, and that culture now, as CEO of the company, I can basically implement across the organization, of course. But we also then, as part of that, created the ETP, the stake Tau ETP with DDA, that is the issuer. Which was listed on SIX last year. And today, as we're in the studio, we launched it on NASDAQ, which means that it's going to be available everywhere unlike the Avanza's, Nordnet, the traditional brokers, which from my perspective, not investment advice, is obviously an amazing asymmetrical bet against centralized AI. It has a large language model company that is valued almost $1 trillion soon. And then you have a whole decentralized platform protocol that is valued, less than $3 billion with 128 different projects that are all doing cutting edge innovation. It's just, from my perspective, like the early stage of Bitcoin that I witnessed. Okay, only one of these needs to do something, and it's off to the races. And we're seeing some groundbreaking stuff happening there. So from my perspective, that's just a matter of time. But if you even just look at it as a hedge against centralized AI, it's okay. The same thing with the DeepSeek kind of moment is like, oh, guess what? You can have an open source model that's competitive with the centralized counterparts. So I'm very happy with that launch today, and it allows also institutional money to flow into at least a product that we put to the market. So I think that kind of also plays into the institutional part, but that's not really what we're looking at from a structural perspective, where we want to put a real product in the market on the infrastructure side, on the exchange and custody side.
This decentralized AI topic seems to giving you mojo back or energy back or something, because 1 year ago I followed you on X.
Yes.
And you really take the role as an educator.
I hope so. I together with Tommy, who was like a data analyst within Safello Labs, but now Safello, of course, in general. We wrote a report that we put out, just looking deeply into the Bittensor ecosystem. I've been vocal about educating people about it. And I think it has all these similarities with Bitcoin, all the good parts from how the protocol is structured with limited amount of tokens, and then applying this proof of intelligence as a counter to the proof of work that you have at Bitcoin. So, and then it has done some very interesting novel things with the subnet market, where, okay, this gets a little bit technical, but I'm a nerd at heart. Where, of course, in things like Ethereum. So for me, there have been 3 major movements in the blockchain space that I thought were interesting. The first was Bitcoin. That was the eye-opener one in 2013 for me. Now, technically a little bit earlier, but I got involved later. And then there was Ethereum, which I think, as with the smart contract philosophy and then the evolution of Ethereum, where it enabled like layer 2s that have their own tokens that still use the gas fees or the thing you pay for in the protocol, use Ethereum. But that had a fundamental flaw in it, that it wasn't really tied in the right way to Ethereum, the main protocol. And what Bittensor has created is a new type of market where the tokens that are on that protocol are directly linked to the main token. So it's kind of figured out a different economic model than Ethereum had, where the ultrasounds kind of use case that they had there didn't really play out as people had anticipated. A lot of information, maybe a bit too techy, but so there are a lot of these similarities, but also differences and kind of innovations within it. But at the core of it, it is actually working, and some things are happening within this protocol, and that is what gets me excited. Is like it's what we call the black swan event of AI. It's like nobody's looking at it. It's certainly not the centralized players. You look at these large research report. I read a report last year. It was 200 pages long, and it was like a footnote mention of decentralized AI, but it was more about open source. It's like, okay, so they have done a 200-page report on AI, arguably trying to cover everything, and they're missing what I would consider as one of the most important, potentially groundbreaking innovations that are taking place, much like Bitcoin under the,
What will then be the major use case when it comes to decentralized AI? Because we are talking about, for instance, AI and blockchain, or the blockchain as a verificator of truth, for instance, in AI. The second topic is the stable coins becoming the money for AI agents. What is the value of Bittensor in this regard?
That's an interesting one, right? Bitcoin was also a whole bunch of things when it started, and then over time, people narrowed it down to whatever they, box it should fit into, but it's still all of the above. And then different blockchains, did different things. I think it is at the end of the day an incentive mechanism to have compute performed, and that can be done autonomously and with economic value. So like if we're talking about a world of artificial intelligence taking over the world, then you do need these agents that are able to economically, move through the world and do things. And what is the currency that they're going to use? How they're going to, how they're going to apply that, and how are they going to create value? So I think there's something like at the core of that type of protocol that can enable that. And then there's different applications of how this consensus algorithm work, where all these subnet define their own, little, their own way of what is required for that particular subnet. So it can be inference, of course, but it can also be, I think there's a subnet that was doing training for drone swarms. It's like, and there was there is one that does a whole training of a model, which is called Templar. Then you have, I need to come up with good examples, but it's just a variety is just endless, and they all have their each specific use case. Much like that, the layer 2s on Ethereum can also have like 100 of different use cases.
But how is Safello then going to create business out of this focus area?
Well, we did create the platform, basically the coin market cap, if you will, for Bittensor. That is wutao.app, and that is tied to your decentralized wallet. You can trade Bittensor, the not only the tokens, not only Tau itself, but Tau compared to all the subnets.
So it's a marketplace.
Well, and we created synthetic pairs as well. So you can only at that particular platform, you can go from one subnet to another. So we created these synthetic markets there as well, which is really cool. And now we're building in other types of intelligence there. So that is, just a destination platform to be ahead of the curve. And then we have the Tau ETP that obviously we hope to be able to tell this decentralized AI story to the institutional market and also the retail market, that they can have a particularly ETP in Sweden, obviously being popular for the tax advantage compared to holding it as a regular asset where you have capital gains instead of it being an ISK where you pay a lot less tax. So that's why the ETP market is so successful in Sweden. And then we have transformed our treasury from Bitcoin into Tau, where the stock, the Safello stock, is partly a proxy for investing in decentralized artificial intelligence.
Have you lost your interest in Bitcoin then, or how is that?
No, not necessarily. I think, but it's at full maturity from my perspective. Bitcoin. It has. When I started, it was a pipe dream. Then. It's been a tremendous kind of evolution from nothing to, being a multi-trillion-dollar asset class. It's fully regulated. It's gone to the point where it's used as a store of value and by even central banks. So like, okay, where to go from there? Has it fulfilled kind of the early stage use cases that the early Bitcoiners like ours saw in terms of creating more equal financial system? Not really. Part of that, you can go through the history of why that was the case. But I would say that like my interest hasn't lost in Bitcoin, but I like innovation. I like where it's going. And we're obviously moving into a world of artificial superintelligence. And in that world, economic agents need to be able, they need to be able to exist. And for that, I think at least there is only one protocol from my perspective in the decentralized world that can surface that has broad applications and is a clear market leader, also market cap, and that's Bittensor. And then the proof is in the pudding. But I like to go where we're going and where the world is going, both for my own organization, how we treat AI, as well as where we allocate capital.
if you are going a little back to Safello and your ambitions as a company and your position, because now there's a lot of things happening in the Nordics. Bybit, OKX is moving into the Nordics. You have CoinMotion moving from Finland to Sweden. You have FIDI coming up and moving into Sweden. What will be your priorities when it comes to market strength and positioning?
I mean, the interesting part is that there's always been that competition. Like all the large players have always been playing there. They've always been there. So what does it take to be a local preferred company, right? And those are the things. And just like CoinMotion, for instance, has a deep penetration in Finland and is the favorite there, and FIDI is in Norway. It isn't as easy to just go into a kind of saturated market and just take over like that. So not impossible, like given enough capital, but that is on the retail side. And then there's the institutional side. That's much harder not to crack. And obviously having deep-rooted roots to the specific country you're trying to penetrate there makes a difference.
So you think you will have a preferred position towards banks and institutions in Sweden?
Who knows? But as it stands right now, we're the only one that has a MiCA license, a Swedish MiCA license, which I do think helps.
Already?
Of course. Yes.
Okay, then 2 or 3 years from now, then what will then be your summary of the next years? What do you think? What is your personal ambitions and what is your ambitions on behalf of Safello?
If AI hasn't taken over the world and we still have a job, well, I do think we should be in a position where we have had that breakthrough on the institutional side, and that is a model that can be exported, obviously, with our MiCA license across Europe. I do think we will have expanded sort of our position in decentralized AI, and taken a lead on sort of a platform side, but also on the ETP side. I think that's an interesting one because it's an institutional accessible instrument. But in short, I think it is on the institutional side. It is kind of the reputation that we want to leverage that we built for as long as we have. And even on a global level, there are very few companies that you can point at that has, survived every audit, gotten licenses, never were hacked, never compromised. There are very few companies that can stand the test of time in this market. And I would say even like institutions that are trying to do it themselves, they will, but they can get burnt if they don't work with the right partners. So I think for financial institutions, particularly if I can speak to them, it's like, yeah, if you want to have a low risk entrance within a regulated environment that you want, while the crypto assets stay within your home market, then obviously that's kind of where we want to play. And I think that we can build on and expand from.
So you're looking forward to this. You seem energized.
So far it's fun. Shake things up a little. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you very much, Frank, and good luck with the next years.
Yeah, thanks for having me.